Okay, get this. The king of rock and roll, the guy whose face was plastered everywhere, actually managed to walk among mere mortals. WITHOUT, causing a total meltdown. And imagine Elvis, dressed like a doctor, wandering hospital halls, totally unnoticed. He even rode roller coasters with everyday folks who had no CLUE, who was screaming next to them. Number 8. The midnight motorcycle rider who nobody knew. Imagine Memphis, late at night. The air is thick and humid, the streets mostly empty. Suddenly, the roar of a powerful engine breaks the silence. A figure on a gleaming Harley-Davidson speeds past, just another rider enjoying the freedom of the open road. Except hidden beneath that helmet, and maybe some simple, non-flashy clothes, was Elvis Presley. This wasn't a one-off. It was one of his favorite escapes. He owned several motorcycles, including Harleys and Triumphs, and the anonymity a helmet offered was priceless. He could feel the wind, see the city lights blur past, and for a precious few moments he wasn't Elvis, the icon trapped in Graceland's gilded cage. He was just a guy on a bike. His security detail, members of the Memphis Mafia, would often follow at a discreet distance in a car, ready to intervene if needed. But surprisingly often, it wasn't necessary. People saw a motorcycle, not the king. He could ride for miles, sometimes stopping on a quiet street just to look around, breathing in the night air, completely unrecognized. Think about the sheer improbability, the swivel-hip superstar, the man whose every move was documented finding simple peace, on two wheels blending into the very fabric of the city he called home. He'd return to Graceland, refreshed, the secret thrill of his unnoticed adventure lighting him up. He craved these moments of normalcy, the chance to experience the world without the overwhelming weight of his own fame, and the motorcycle offered a perfect, albeit temporary, disguise. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was looking for peace, for the feeling of just being one of the guys, even if only under the cover of darkness and a fiberglass shell. He loved the power of the machine beneath him, the control, the feeling of movement without the constant gaze of adoring or sometimes critical eyes. It was a pure, unadulterated escape, a brief return to a simpler time before the world knew his name. The success wasn't about fooling everyone forever. It was about stealing those precious minutes or hours of being invisible. Number 7. The king who just wanted to watch a movie, like everyone else. Elvis, LOVED movies. Action flicks, comedies, karate movies, you name it. He had his own screening room at Graceland, sure, and he famously rented out entire movie theaters in Memphis after hours for private screenings with his entourage. Places like the Memphian or the Crosstown became his personal playgrounds late at night. But sometimes, apparently, that wasn't quite the same as the real deal. He missed the shared experience, the darkness filled with strangers all focused on the same giant screen. So how did the most famous man on earth slip into a public cinema? Carefully. Very, very carefully. According to accounts from his inner circle, there were occasions, though likely rare, where Elvis would try to catch a regular public showing. This involved meticulous planning. He couldn't just walk up to the box office. Someone else would buy the tickets. He'd arrive late, often, after the lights had gone down and the previews were rolling. Dressed down, maybe a simple jacket, a hat pulled low, perhaps sunglasses even in the dark, He and maybe one or two trusted friends would slip into seats in the back row. The key was timing and avoiding attention. No flashy entrances, no loud talking. Just blend into the shadows. He'd watch the film, maybe munching on popcorn someone else had procured, immersed in the story unfolding on screen. The thrill was palpable, sitting there shoulder to shoulder with people who adored his music, sang his songs, maybe even had his posters on their walls, and they had no idea he was right there beside them. He had to leave just before the credits rolled and the house lights came up, melting back into the night before anyone could get a good look. It was a high-wire act. One wrong move, one person recognizing his profile even in the dim light, and the whole operation would be blown, potentially causing chaos. But the allure of experiencing something so normal, something he used to do freely before fame hit, was a powerful motivator. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just wanted to feel that connection to the everyday world he was so often shielded from, even if just for the length of a feature film. These weren't the legendary all-night rental parties. These were stealth missions into normalcy. Number 6. The secret shopper-seeking regular stuff. Elvis could buy anything he wanted. Cars, jewelry, houses snap his fingers, and it was his. Graceland was filled with treasures. But sometimes, a guy just wants to browse right. Maybe look at some regular stuff in a regular store without causing a stampede. While he often had stores open late just for him, or sent his guys out to buy things, there were documented instances where Elvis attempted, and sometimes succeeded, in doing a little incognito shopping himself, usually very late at night or during odd hours. Imagine him slipping into a department store or maybe even a hardware store, perhaps looking for something specific or maybe just wanting to wander the aisles like an ordinary person. Again, disguise was key, but often it was less about elaborate costumes and more about dressing down significantly. No jumpsuits, no capes, no flashy jewelry. Think simple trousers, a plain shirt, maybe a jacket, and a baseball cap or hat pulled down low. He'd often go with one or two of the Memphis Mafia, who would act as buffers and try to run interference if anyone started looking too closely. Sometimes he'd browse electronics, or tools, or even just household goods. The goal wasn't necessarily to buy truckloads of stuff, but to experience the simple act of looking, touching, considering things most people take for granted. There's a famous story, though perhaps more legend than fully verified stealth trip, about him visiting a department store to buy gifts, managing to browse for a while before being recognized. Other accounts suggest quicker, more targeted trips, maybe needing a specific item late at night when only a 24-hour store was open. He might wait in the car while one of his guys went in, or sometimes, driven by that desire for normalcy, he'd venture in himself, keeping his head down, speaking softly, trying to deflect any attention. Could he linger for hours? Probably not. But could he slip in, grab what he needed, or browse for a short while without triggering mass hysteria? Apparently, yes, on occasion. It speaks volumes about his intense fame that such a mundane activity required cloak and dagger planning and constituted a successful escape. He just wanted to see what was on the shelves, maybe feel the texture of a fabric or compare prices, without the world watching. Number 5. Dr. Presley makes his rounds, sort of. This one sounds wild, but there are accounts suggesting Elvis sometimes used disguises to visit people in hospitals without drawing massive attention. Now, often these were private visits arranged beforehand, but the sheer level of his fame meant even entering a hospital discreetly was a challenge. Fans, staff, other patients' recognition was almost guaranteed. So, what's a king to do? According to some stories shared by those close to him, Elvis occasionally donned simple disguises, sometimes even, reportedly, borrowing or acquiring doctor's coats or orderly uniforms to move through hospital corridors. Picture Elvis maybe with a surgical mask long before they were commonplace for the public, and a borrowed white coat or scrubs, walking purposefully down a hallway. Most people automatically afford a certain level of invisibility or authority to medical personnel. They're focused on their jobs, moving with purpose. Elvis could potentially use this to his advantage. He wasn't trying to impersonate a doctor for kicks. It was allegedly a means to an end, perhaps visiting a sick friend, a family member of someone in his circle, or even making a quiet charitable visit without the fanfare that usually accompanied his public appearances. He had a well-known generous streak and often helped people privately. This method, if used, would allow him to offer comfort or support more personally. Obviously, this required careful coordination. He couldn't just wander around. He'd likely be escorted by someone who knew the layout and could navigate him quickly to his destination, perhaps using staff elevators or less traveled corridors. The success here wasn't about spending hours undetected, but about reaching a specific person or place within the hospital environment without causing a commotion that would disrupt the hospital's functioning or turn a private moment into a public spectacle. While details are often anecdotal and part of the larger Elvis lore, the idea of him using such a disguise highlights the extreme measures necessary for him to navigate the world outside his Graceland bubble, especially when trying to do something personal or kind. The image itself is striking. The king of rock and roll, undercover as a healer. Number 4. Fun and anonymity at the fairground. Elvis was a big kid at heart. He loved amusement parks, roller coasters, carnival games. He famously rented out the entire Libertyland amusement park in Memphis multiple times, usually from midnight till dawn, so he and his friends could ride the Zippin' Pippin' roller coaster and enjoy the attractions without being mobbed. Those nights were legendary private parties under the stars. But what about mixing with the regular crowd? It seems almost impossible, but there are accounts suggesting Elvis did manage to visit fairs or amusement parks during public hours on very rare occasions, blending in just enough to get a taste of the fun. Timing, disguise, and maybe a bit of luck. Imagine him going on an off-peak day, or time perhaps when crowds were smaller. He wouldn't be wearing a jumpsuit, obviously. Think. Casual clothes, a hat, sunglasses. He might stick to the less crowded areas or try to hop on a ride quickly, with his companions forming a loose circle around him, trying to appear nonchalant. Maybe he'd try his hand at a carnival game, tossing rings or shooting targets, the prize being the thrill of not being instantly recognized. The noise, the lights, the general chaos of a fairground could actually work in his favor, providing a level of distraction. People are focused on the rides, the food, their own families. They might not be scanning the crowd for a global superstar in disguise. Of course, the risk of discovery was huge. His voice, his mannerisms, even his walk could give him away. But for Elvis, the chance to feel the G-force of a roller coaster alongside everyday folks, to hear the screams and laughter without being the center of it all, might have been worth the risk. These weren't leisurely, day-long excursions. They were likely quick-targeted missions to experience a specific ride or soak in the atmosphere for a short period before melting away. The success was measured in moments: a shared laugh on a spinning ride, a quick thrill on a coaster, a moment of observation achieved before the inevitable recognition forced a retreat. He got a taste of the normal fun he craved. Number 3. The late-night donut run nobody noticed. Sometimes, fame isolates you from the simplest pleasures. Like getting a fresh hot donut late at night. Elvis had a legendary appetite and a particular fondness for certain foods, and stories abound of his late-night cravings. While he could easily have donuts delivered to Graceland by the boxload, and often did, there's something different about getting them fresh yourself, or at least being there when they're bought. Accounts from the Memphis Mafia detail missions to places like Krispy Kreme late at night. Often, Elvis would wait in the car, sending one of his guys inside to fetch the sugary treats. But sometimes, apparently, the craving or the desire for a tiny slice of normal life was so strong that Elvis himself would make a brief appearance. Imagine a quiet donut shop, maybe only one or two other customers inside, the staff busy behind the counter. Elvis, perhaps in a simple disguise like a cap and jacket, might quickly step inside with a friend, point at what he wanted, or let his friend handle the transaction while he briefly took in the mundane scene, the fluorescent lights, the rows of glazed delights, the smell of coffee and sugar. He wouldn't linger. He wouldn't chat up the staff. It was an in-and-out operation. The goal was the donut, yes, but also the fleeting feeling of performing a simple, everyday errand. Did the counter clerk sometimes do a double take, maybe? Did a late-night customer think that guy looked kinda familiar, possibly? But often, in the dead of night, people are tired, preoccupied, and not expecting to encounter the king of rock and roll buying a cruller. He could slip in, satisfy the craving, and slip out back to the safety of his limousine or to van, the taste of the forbidden normalcy that is still sweet on his tongue. It wasn't about the donut itself. It was about the act of getting it, a tiny rebellion against the constraints of his extraordinary life. Number 2. Just another face in the crowd at a karate tournament. Elvis's passion for martial arts, particularly karate, was deep and genuine. He trained seriously, achieved a high black belt rank, and incorporated karate moves into his stage performances. He wasn't just a casual fan. He was a dedicated practitioner and promoter of the arts. This passion sometimes led him outside the Graceland gates to attend karate demonstrations or tournaments. While he often attended as a celebrated guest, receiving VIP treatment, there were occasions where he reportedly tried to attend more discreetly, simply as an enthusiast wanting to watch the competition without causing a disruption. Think about a crowded gymnasium or hall filled with martial arts, students, instructors, and fans. The focus is on the action on the mats. Perhaps dressed in a simple tracksuit or casual wear, maybe sitting slightly away from the main throng or arriving after the event started, could potentially blend in more easily here than in many other public settings. His interest would appear natural. He might sit with his own karate instructor like Ed Parker or other martial arts friends, engrossed in the techniques and matches. People might notice him, yes, but in this environment, his presence might be slightly less jarring. He was known for his love of karate, so seeing him at such an event wasn't totally out of the blue. The key to Incognito here might be less about total anonymity and more about being able to observe and enjoy the event without triggering the usual pandemonium. He could watch the forms, the sparring, appreciate the skill involved, perhaps for a significant period, before his presence became widely known or problematic. He wasn't Elvis the entertainer here. He was Elvis the martial artist, sharing a space with fellow practitioners. This shared interest provided a thin veil of normalcy, allowing him moments of relatively undisturbed observation of something he truly loved. He could appreciate the discipline and skill on display, not as a sequestered king, but as part of the community, even if only temporarily and from the sidelines. Number 1. Driving aimlessly through Memphis, unbothered. Beyond the targeted motorcycle escapes, sometimes Elvis just wanted to drive. Not necessarily fast, not necessarily on two wheels, but just cruise. He loved cars, Cadillacs, Lincolns, Stutz Picus, and he loved driving them. Late at night, when Memphis quieted down, he would sometimes get behind the wheel himself or have one of his trusted friends drive and just explore the city streets with no particular destination in mind. This wasn't about showing off his fancy cars. Often he might choose a less conspicuous vehicle or rely on the anonymity of darkness. Driving offered a unique kind of privacy. Inside the car, he was in his own little bubble, watching the world go by through the windshield. He could see the familiar landmarks, the quiet neighborhoods, the late-night diners, all without having to interact or be seen directly. He might follow random routes, maybe drive past places that held memories from before his fame, or just enjoy the simple rhythm of the road. His security might follow discreetly but often. Other drivers on the road wouldn't pay much attention to just another car cruising late at night. They wouldn't know the king was behind the wheel, perhaps humming along to the radio, lost in thought, or pointing something out to a companion. These drives were purely for relaxation, for clearing his head, for feeling connected to his hometown in a low-key way. He could see people walking, other cars passing, life happening outside his windows, and remain an unseen observer. It was a way to be in the world, but not of it. For a little while, there were no crowds to navigate, no disguises needed beyond the tinted glass and the darkness. Just the road, the car, and a temporary illusion of freedom. He could direct the route on a whim, turn left here, right there, simply following the flow, unnoticed by the sleeping city. These aimless drives were perhaps the simplest, yet most profound way. He experienced moments of public anonymity, watching the world without the world watching back.